I'm going to be talking a little bit about the selected topics, the literary canon, and Great American Read. I picked this topic in part the because of the uh, PBS series, The Great American Read, and I'm showing you here some of the posters that they made about the Great American Read. And I thought this would be a great way for us to start a conversation about what the literary canon means, what it means to be a work that people say, you really need to read this, which was really one of the major points of, the Great American Read series and the whole idea behind the Great American Read. People weren't making cases that these were great books or that they were culturally significant books, but that they were books that people needed to read so that they could enjoy the book, so that it would change the way they were, as one commentator said, that he was a different person after he had read one of the books on the Great American Read. And here's a list of the books on the Great American Read where people voted. The rankings here are about that. And one of the assignments that you will do for this class is you will read your favorite book from this list. So I'm putting a caveat sort of on that and talk about it. And then you'll pick a book from this list that is really outside of the genres that you feel comfortable reading. For example, if you like mysteries and thrillers like The Da Vinci Code, why don't you try Frank Herbert's Dune, a science fiction book? Or if you're a real proponent of things like The Little Prince, The Outsiders, or Where the Red Fern Grows, why don't you try The Handmaid's Tale, dystopian fiction, or The Hunger Games, another example of dystopian fiction. If you really like stories about nature, like The Call of the Wild, why don't you maybe pick A Prayer for Owen Meany about contemporary society? So those will be two of the books that you'll be reading for this class. And you will also get a chance to say, well, the book that I really think people want to read, that I really get excited about introducing people to, isn't even on this list of books. So I want to introduce the class to that. You'll have a chance to do that. We're also going to be talking about what the whole concept of canonicity is and how it somehow relates to the concept of coverage. If you're going to be a teacher and you have to teach, American literature, what works do you need to pick that will help you do this? In addition to the novels themselves, we'll also be reading a book called Falling into Theory, Conflicting Views on Reading Literature. The book is widely available, but actually it's out of print. So I didn't ask the bookstore to buy copies of it because I'm sure they would sell them to you at an extraordinary price. That's why when you look on required text for this book, you're not going to see anything here. But we are going to read this. It's very accessible as a used book. It's also accessible as an ebook, as things down there. And one of the reasons I want to pick it is I love the title of the works in here. Why we read, the university, the humanities, and the provenance of literature. What we have loved, others will love. That idea that we have, I think, as teachers, and certainly the Great American Read talked about that as well. People were saying, like, I love this book. It transformed me. And the idea that other people will love books, which as a teacher, sometimes you're appalled that people don't love the book. They don't identify with the book. They don't have the same kind of relationship to it that you do. And some of the other things here about the function of English at the present time. Where do we stand as a discipline? Where do we stand? Why is it problematic for people to say, I want to be an English major? Why do we have these attitudes towards them? And then a little more implicit things about how the books that we choose tell us about race and gender and sexism and imperialism, and often don't tell us as much about the world that we live in as we wish it were. But sometimes books written from long ago can tell us a lot about the world that we live in today. I just participated in Frankenreads. I'm listening to Frankenstein, a book 200 years old, written by a very young woman, about a world that does seem very foreign to us, and yet the questions asked in that book are very pertinent to our 21st century world. What responsibility do we have for our creations, whether our creations are living beings or whether our creations are artificial intelligence or smart driving cars or even Facebook? I personally think that Mark Zuckerberg is appalled to find out some of the ways that Facebook is used today. How do you share your love of books with people? What books do you say? This is the book that you should read. And why do you say that? These are some of the things that we'll be talking about this semester in this special topics course, Literary Canon and the Great American Read, which we'll find in the schedule of classes as Lit, Can, and GR8 American Read. Yes, I have introduced texting language into the schedule of classes. I hope to see you in the spring.